עכשיו? לשתוק קצת? חבר'ה, we would welcome you to come and to Okay, well, welcome. We're going to begin this evening with the lighting of the second light of Hanukkah, this Chag Orim, this festival of lights, and we're going to invite you to join together as the cantor leads both Rabbi Kane and I, and all of us in the prayers, the blessings over the Chanukiah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Chanukah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa nisim lavoteinu bayamim ho'im bazman hazeh ma'otzur yeshuati L'chana el shabei Tikon betefilati vishamdu dan izabeach litachin marbeach mitzur hamnabeach azegmur bishir mizmor Hanukat hamizbeach azegmur bishir mizmor Hanukat hamizbeach. Chag Sameach, everyone.
I have the great privilege of being asked to welcome everybody and introduce Hannah Cohen, who will be coming up to really do the introductions. But I would want to express on behalf of Cantor Frank and Rabbi Kane our communal communities and truly the greater San Diego Jewish community, our appreciation for your presence. I know that you left a very difficult vote and you forestalled your coming to California for that vote, but that has made your trip all that much more hurried, and yet you came and you're spending time with us, and the individual that you are, the work that you have done is not only a blessing for the state and the people as a whole, but for us to be able to share in it, a blessing for each of us. So thank you to member of Knesset Michal Rozin. I also want to thank J Street in general for underwriting and sponsoring the MK's visit here. This is a significant opportunity, something that probably neither, even if we pulled our resources, the two shuls could not afford to bring off, and yet here we are, privileged to speak with the gap of the ocean closed, our hearts right next to each other. Yael Mazel is here tonight, and she has helped on behalf of, she's in the back waving, on behalf of J Street, and certainly want to thank you for all of your efforts as well. Before I bring Hannah up to the podium, I want to just simply express to you that we take note. Tonight is the second night of Hanukkah. And if anything we are to learn from Hanukkah, it is not necessarily the miracle that was professed to have occurred some 2,000 years ago, that of a small amount of oil lasting for some 8 days. Rather, it is the lesson that we learned either through omission or eventually commission, that tolerance is the best practice in wanting to assure the future of a Jewish people, certainly of a Jewish state. That Michal Rozin is here today reflects the fight for tolerance. The fight to end misogyny, the fight to end child abuse, the fight to bring equal rights to the LGBT community, the fight to win the rights of those who would seek to live in a pluralistic society. She is a champion in many ways. She fights, but she does so respectfully, and that is how she makes her work happen. And so, in the spirit of Hanukkah tonight, in the spirit of that lesson of great tolerance, I hope for us to use this as an opportunity to learn from one who has done the walk, on the ground, in the field, who knows from experience what is there. To listen and to learn, and then maybe later we can carry on the debate. But for now, tonight, to really listen, to ask questions that will help to inform us. And in that spirit, I would bring Hannah forward.
Thank you. Welcome. It's a pleasure to see all of you here tonight. On behalf of Temple Adat Shalom Board of Trustees and our entire community, thank you for joining us this evening as we welcome Israeli member of the Knesset, Michal Rozin. It is an honor to have Michal Rozin at Adat Shalom, and with our co-host Nir Tamid Synagogue, we thank J Street for the investment of its time and resources to make this evening possible. As Rabbi said, we could not have done this even with both of our temples combined. My family has been a member of Adat Shalom for almost 40 years, and I am proud how we have evolved as a close-knit congregation. It is truly my second home. I am deeply committed to the growth and future of our congregation and to the larger San Diego Jewish community. However, like many of you, I am worried about the future of the Jewish people, and especially of the survival of Israel as a Jewish and democratic homeland. To address these issues, I believe it is critical to have an open, inclusive, and vibrant discourse about Israel and how, as we, American Jews, can best support Israel. All of us fervently want a peaceful and secure Israel. Depending upon our ideologies, however, each of us approach the subject of Israel differently. For me personally, J Street has supported and provided a voice that most closely aligns with my values. And I am proud of the work that we have done to create open, nuanced, and meaningful conversations about these issues in the Jewish community and with our nation's leaders. J Street and I support the people and the state of Israel and their right to defend themselves and to live in peace alongside the Palestinians. I know some of you, maybe many of you in this room, do not agree with my views, and that's okay. What is important is that you are here tonight to listen to our speaker about the current status of Israel and what the future may hold. I thank you and am deeply appreciative that you are here. But we must not forget that ultimately we all want peace for Jews and for Israel and for Jews around the world. And now it is my honor to introduce member of the Knesset, Michal Rozin, from the Meretz Party. In the Knesset, MKRozin serves as a member of the Constitutional Law and Justice Committee. She also serves as co-chairwoman of the LGBT lobby, the chair of the Lobby for Pluralism and Civil Equality, and the chair of the Lobby for Equality in Employment. Before her election in 2013, she served as a policy advisor and political consultant to several members of the Knesset. In those roles, she fought for gender equality, religious pluralism, refugee and migrant rights, and environmental justice issues, which she continues to champion. In 2008, Rozin was appointed CEO of the Association of Crisis Centers for the Victims of Sexual Assault in Israel, where she emerged as the leader of the public campaign against sexual violence. Please join me in a warm welcome to Michal Rozin.
Wow, good evening. I'm really, really excited. So I hope my words won't disappear in a second.
Just a little.
Okay, you hear me, right? Yes. Like I said today in the lunchtime that in the Knesset I have to be really vocal, because we are in the opposition and Meretz is the smallest fraction in the Knesset. So we sit in the back branch, like we say, in the back seat. So we need to shout all the time that the Speaker of the House will hear us and everybody will hear us. So usually I have a really loud voice, but you will hear me today. So first of all, I really want to thank you to come in here to listen to me. I don't see it as, obvious thing. And I want to thank J Street. I don't see Yael now. Oh, hi. Yeah, thank you. I'm following J Street organization for years, and I think they're doing an amazing job and bringing another voice of the Jewry, the Jewish Jewry here in the community in the state. And I'm really honored and blessed that you give me the opportunity to talk to you. And I want to talk about the delicate balance of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. And I have to say this issue becoming in Israel more and more problematic in the last few years. And I want to start, with telling you that the basic identity of Israel these days as a democratic and Jewish state is being challenged all the time by new legislation in the Knesset and by government decision almost every day. My grandparents came from Poland during the fifth immigration. They came very young, believing in the Zionist dream, and they believed that Israel should be home of the Jewish people, but also a democratic state with equality for all the minorities in Israel and all the citizens in Israel. Just now, in the last year, the government issued a new law. They call it, the nationality law. What this law is trying to do is break the balance between democratic and Jewish state. What they're trying to decide is the fact that the identity of Israel as Jewish will be more important, more influence on the state decision, the Supreme Court decision, than the democratic values. For example, the laws say that if the Supreme Court has a dilemma between equality or freedom of rights or freedom of speech or even rights of some minority like LGBT or even women's rights, but the Jewish law says something else, they need to prefer the Jewish law on the basic law, democratic basic law in Israel. As you know, we don't have a constitution, but we have since the 90s, we have what we called basic laws. This is laws, a set of laws that are higher than regular law. And the Supreme Court is usually judged by this basic law. And what they want to say to the Supreme Court, prefer the Jewish law and prefer the interest of Israel as a nation than over equality, and over human rights. For example, if we talk about immigrants, migrant workers, asylum seekers, they want the Supreme Court, of course, to prefer the interest of Israel to exclude these people instead of saving them and seize them and, as human beings deserve equal right. So the first victim of this agenda, like I said, is this constitution or some kind of constitution that we have in Israel. The second victim in the notion that Israel is the national home of all Jews. As you know better than me, Israel or the governments in Israel prefer to give the Orthodox Jews the monopoly on all the Jewish issues in Israel. It began not today. It began with Ben-Gurion and, the generation of my grandparents coming to Israel, living the diaspora, living the Jewish life they lived in the small towns in Poland, in Russia, and all the countries they came from. And they didn't care about Judaism, they didn't care about tradition. They want to be the new Israelis, So they gave up all this issue to the religious party and to the observant Jews in Israel. I grew up in a country that nobody taught me anything about the Jewish religion. Nothing. I had holidays at home, ceremonies at school, but never in my life I see a book of prayers. We only learn the Bible. And also in the Bible, I have to say, the chapter that they chose was how we conquered the country and how we killed all our enemies. Okay? But it's not only what I learned at school. That's also what my 3 children learned in the secular system education in Israel. They don't know anything. If I didn't choose to be a part of the reform movement, to give them the chance to have a bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah ceremony in a reform synagogue, they wouldn't know anything about who they are if they are Jewish. Most of the Israeli, the secular one, doesn't feel the need to know that, because when you grow up in Israel, you feel Jewish because you're Israeli, so you know that you're Jewish. It's not something that you have to think about. Why am I Jewish? Am I Jewish? All these questions. But the fact is, the Orthodox Jews prefer that we will be ignorant, prefer that we be secular and even sinners, than be nothing else than Orthodox Jews. Just a week ago, I sat in the Knesset with members of Knesset, ultra-Orthodox, observant Jews, and also secular, from all kinds of parties. And I told them about my daughter having a bat mitzvah ceremony next week on Saturday. Almost each one of them was shocked. The ultra-Orthodox asked me to stop it, to say, please, please cancel it, please save her soul, don't do it. But I told the secular one, the representative in the Knesset, why are you so against it? You are not observant Jews, you eat everything, you not keep kosher, you not keep any mitzvah. So why are you so against it? And they say, you're breaking the tradition. Breaking the tradition. The fact that we are surrendering our Judaism only to the ultra-Orthodox this, of course, it's our fault, but this is a big price that we're paying not only in Israel, to the citizen of Israel, but also to Jewish people all over the world, and breaking the connection between the Jewish all over the world. And this was one of the goals to establish the state of the Jewish people, that it will be a home for all the Jewish people, the citizen and not citizen, one that live in Israel and one that still stay in the diaspora. So this is the second victim, and of course for the Orthodox, like I said, the Reform and the conservative conversion are not accepted, not legitimized, and in Israel you can be Jew only if you have Orthodox conversion, and if not, you're not a Jew. 300,000 Israelis, citizens, cannot get married in Israel. They have to go abroad to get married, to be recognized in Israel as married. 300,000. And that's the one that cannot. I'm not talking about the one that don't want to get married by the Orthodox way and by the rabbinic court and rabbinic system. They cannot get married. And if you want to divorce in Israel, the only way you can divorce, even if you got married in a civil marriage outside of Israel, the only way you can get divorce in Israel is by rabbinic court. And if the man decide not to let his wife divorce him, she can be aguna, as you know, for years. In Israel, we have 200,000 women waiting to get the divorce from their husband. And I don't know if you know, but by the halacha, the husband, in the case of divorce, is stronger than even the rabbinic court, because he needs to give the get. He needs to give the divorce. If he is not willing to give it, we have all kind of laws. We can put him even in jail if it's coming to that. But still, what happens is that women in Israel, in marriage and divorce, are second best. Because if you want to get divorced, you are blackmailed to give your apartment, to give him money, the business, to sign up everything. And now they even changing, because it's still in process, the law that says until now, by the halacha, children till the age of 6 are going with the mother. Now they're changing that also. So it will become another way to blackmail the mothers, to tell them, you want to have the child? Give up child support. Give up whatever I need you to give up. So the fact that Israel, supposed to be the free country for Jewish people. Jewish people came to Israel to be free and to be equal and to live a free life. We find ourselves under this ultra-Orthodox and halacha rules that we need to live under. Another example of the fights against any progressive ceremonies in Israel is the Western Wall. As you know, I became part of Women of the Wall, not because I'm a religious person, and I'm not even, I will tell you in a secret, sorry rabbis, I'm not even a believer. I'm not. I don't believe in God. But I believe that I'm Jewish, and I'm allowed to decide if I'm Jewish or not, and I'm allowed to decide in what way I practice my Judaism. I allowed to decide if I want to be driving on Saturday but having a bar mitzvah in a Reform synagogue, or get married by a rabbi or not. I allowed to decide how to perform my beliefs, my tradition, and for me to be Jewish, that's my family, my community, my country, and you all, my people. And the fact there are people that decide who is Jewish, who is not, and decide who can get married and who is not, and who can pray at the Western Wall and how to do it, it's terrible in the way I think about it. So instead of allowing people to practice their belief the way they want, the women of the wall, of course, didn't surrender to the extreme paradigm of the Orthodox rabbi. As you know, the area of the Kotel, the Western Wall, is not a synagogue. It's not a synagogue. And in the past, women and men were praying together in the same area. More than that, this is also a national area, a national ceremony place. So in Hanukkah, for example, the president, the prime minister, and the minister are invited to come on the first day of Hanukkah to light a candle. They're doing it in the men's side, so women cannot be there. If I'm a minister, if I'm a member of Knesset, I can't be there. I have to stand on some kind of platform, on a balcony, and to look on their heads. So, this is not a synagogue. This is a national ceremony place, and you're making an official nationality ceremony, and I can't be a part of it. I'm excluded from that. What happening is, in the last few years, growing more and more, the governmental policy betrays the Zionist idea and the definition of Israel as a national home of all the Jews. And the third victim is, like I said, the ability to be free in our own country. And the idea of freedom is rooted in our history as a people. We came to Israel to be free. So every year in Seder, we say that we tell the story to our children about how we got free from Paro in Egypt and came to Israel to be free. And God help us to be free. Let my people go. And in Israel, we are not free. Like I said, women cannot be free when they got married or divorced. Of course, LGBT community cannot be free to get married, to have children. All of this denied from them. I have to say that it's been my honor in Israel to few times a year couples call me and ask me to marry them. And I'm always glad to agree, and I'm doing that. And it's really, really joyful and full of pure celebration, even if it's same-sex couple or intermarriage couples that cannot get married in the legal way in Israel. So I'm really proud to do that. This week, before I came here, the rabbi mentioned it. there was a vote in the Knesset against opening stores on Shabbat, on Saturday. Of course, I believe that Shabbat in Israel is supposed to be, the rest day for all the people, and people can rest on Shabbat, on Saturday. And of course, we need one day of relax and not working. But the fact is that this law tries to impose the rule of the halakha on all the municipality in Israel and not allowing them to decide, each municipality to themselves, which people are living in their town and what is the good law or the right law to have in the same town. For example, I can go to any restaurant on Saturday and eat pizza. But if I want to go to the store and buy flour and cheese and tomato sauce, I can't do that because that law says I can't. It's a political struggle, and they're trying to shift the status quo all the time. And what's happening is that a minority, an extreme Orthodox minority, is trying to influence the life of the majority in Israel. And now you will ask me, so why the majority is not opposing that? Why the majority doesn't stand against that? Because the Israeli are used to think that there are two ways to be Jew. Or you're Orthodox and observant Orthodox Jews, or you're secular. There's not something else. There's nothing else in the middle. That's the only two ways. And they believe that Judaism is to be Orthodox. I can be a sinner, but if I want to talk about tradition, about Judaism, this is the Orthodox way. They believe that. They can go to shop on Saturday, and if I ask them, do you believe that the stores should be closed, they will tell you yes. And I tell them, but you're shopping right now. I said, yes, but we have to keep the tradition. So one of our struggle is really to try to educate the public and to have more Jewish learning at schools and to have more pluralistic Jewish learning at school, that they know that they have all kinds of options. But I think that most of the people start to understand that the monopoly of the Orthodox, it's too much for them. And like in the 80s, there will come time really soon that they feel that the use of power by the minority, by the ultra-Orthodox parties, because they have such an influence in the government these days, it's going to turn on them, I have to say, because the Israel public love their freedom and doesn't want change of life in everyday life for them. So I really believe that it will happen soon. Unfortunately, Netanyahu doesn't understand that. Unfortunately, his goal is to maintain his coalition, to maintain his rule. So he allows the ultra-Orthodox, or I can say each party on the coalition, every day, to come with another idea or another legislation. Sometimes they're fighting between each other. Who will be more extremists? If it's on Jewish laws or if it's on against Arab, racist laws, they're just fighting between each other. And he needs to, to please everyone. That's why he came back hurrying from Brussels to vote in the Knesset just 2 nights ago, because he was afraid that the ultra-Orthodox will break the coalition and go to election. In this way, he's selling all of us. He's selling the Israelis, citizens, the majority of them, and I'm sorry to say that, but he's selling the Jewry around the world, especially in the United States. The fact that he agreed to the Kotel program, to the quality platform, as we call it, and then took it back. The fact that he agreed to change the law of the national law, the basic law, that the Jewish law will be superior to the equality law, to the democratic law, all of that only to secure his government, only on the expense of the Israel citizen. I'm coming to a very delicate subject, but I have to say it. When we talk about democratic issues, we cannot talk just on Israel's state alone, without talking about the occupation, without talking about the occupied territories, without talking about 2.9 million Palestinians living inside what we call Big Israel, from the Jordan River to the sea. It's more than 50 years since the 67 war, that we live in one state, but only 2/3 of the state are citizens. We cannot talk about Jewish values, moral values, democratic values. I don't see the difference between Jewish values and democratic values. I think Jewish values are democratic values, equality values. So when we talk about balancing between Jewish state and democratic state, we need to look at the occupation, and we need to understand that the Zionist vision cannot last if we will keep the occupation and maintain it. Because either we be a Jewish state, one state that will be Jewish but not democratic, because some of the people will be citizen and some will be second best and not be citizen, only resident with some rights and some not. Or, and that of course it's my solution and J Street solution, promoting this solution of course, to have a separation and to have the two-state solution. And for decades, any polls, any survey shows that the majority of the Israelis voting for the two-state solution. I know that you will ask, so why is the right wing so strong and the left is weaker? First, I have to say that if you look at the past 40 years, there's no difference in the proportion between the left, right, and center in Israel. It depends who can form a government, because we have a coalition parliamentarian system. But only the last polls in Israel show that the center-left can form a government next time. And any survey shows that the Israeli wants the two-state solution. We see it in the Israeli side, we see it on the Palestinian side, and it's every time they check, even during the Gaza war, even if you call it the protective edge war, right? Protective edge. And also in the 4 terrible months we had last year with the stabbing on the street, especially in Jerusalem, the survey always shows the people want separation from the Palestinian and to have a Palestinian state near the Israel state. So we can't speak about Jewish country, a Jewish state and a democratic state without solving the issue of the occupation and solving the Israeli and Palestinian conflict. Everything connected. And my call for you is the way that you fight for the women of the wall, for having a pluralistic Jewish state in Israel. Remember that fighting for the two-state solution is also fighting for democratic and Jewish Israel. Thank you.
You should have, I'm going to get you some more water here. Yeah, water, we've got a lot of those. So, you should have cards and writing instruments. So if you'd like to write down questions, I believe that Hannah and Phil and Mary will be collecting them. Rabbi Kane and I are going to have a chance to talk a little bit with the member of Knesset up here on the pulpit, and while we're doing that, you'll have a chance to write out your questions and hand them in, and then we'll have a question and answer period. So after you, and anywhere you want to be. Why don't you take the middle?
Okay. Maybe we take this one.
So, I want to thank you very much for a very candid and honest presentation of how you understand things, your love for Zionism and for the state of Israel and its future. I think that we're all fortunate to have you serving. One of my questions was Ben-Gurion wrong? Did he make a mistake in affording this remnant of the European Jews such a hold and such a stake?
I find it a little bit problematic to start criticizing history, as you know. They came to Israel to establish, social democratic country, to be the new Jewish people, to be what we call tzabar, not to be the diaspora Jew, the yeshiva boys. They wanted to be different. They want to go back to the Bibles, to see the heroes of the Bible and the prophet, and not to be the diaspora Jews that they knew from home. So I don't want to, to criticize history, but I have to say that, yes, I think Ben-Gurion not only make a mistake that gave up all the Jewish issues, Jewish tradition, Jewish parts of the new state, in education, in, like I said, marriage and divorce, in all the issue of the rabbinic court, how to be buried. Until a decade ago, you can only be buried by the Jewish halakha law, and if you were not exactly Jewish, or they didn't know exactly if you're Jewish, you will be buried outside the fence. Okay, we had terrible story about soldiers that die in war in Israel, And because they weren't sure they're really Jewish or whatever, they buried them outside of the out behind the fence. So only a decade ago, we solved that by having a new bill that we can bury in Israel in a secular way, not just traditional and religious way. So I think all this generation didn't understand the importance of tradition, and they didn't understand the importance of, if you're secular, you still want to be connected to your roots. And because they came with the roots, they wanted to disconnect the roots. And what we're trying to do is to connect them back, and to connect them to what feels for us right, and what allied with our liberal and progressive ideas. And not, I'm sorry, but I have to say that. I was trying not to say that. But when you say the bracha today, on the candles, you say Avoteinu, our fathers. And we always say, and our mothers. So we didn't have just fathers, we had also mothers. So I want to have tradition, and I want to have my religious, but in the way that it's related to my life. The same is my children and probably my grandchildren. So I don't think it was wrong. He thought that for him to be Jewish is to be an Israeli, to go back to the Bible days. Okay, so he didn't care about all the other issues. But we can't blame all the time our parents, My mother always said, in the end, you have to save money for the psychology, because at the end, your children will find something to blame you for. So we can't blame all the time, the builders of our country. So we have to change it. We changed so many things. Why not to change that? And that's the only thing we didn't change. Nothing changed. So religious, only Orthodox.
Michal, can you hear me okay?
Well, I don't know if it's on, actually.
Oh, that might be it.
Now you're on.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay? So Michal, I've noticed, I think everyone has, that when I'm talking to an Israeli or an American, and I agree with their position or their candidate, they say, thank you for your support. And when I disagree with them, they say, an American shouldn't have an opinion. Only Israelis who live in the country should have an opinion. But you're here in San Diego. How do you think about it? How would you help us tell our congregations and our friends about, do we have a right to have an opinion if our children don't serve in the military? But clearly you came to talk to us. How would you help us think about it?
Yes, I think you have a place around the table, for sure. I think that's the main point of having a state that it's the homeland for the Jewish people. The Jewish people, not just the citizen of Israel, but the Jewish people all around the world. It's not an easy part, I have to say, as a liberal, as a progressive, as a leftist in Israel, to explain it sometime to the Arab citizen in Israel. They don't really understand the concept of you are part of the Jewish homeland. But for me, that's the reason why we establish a Jewish state. If not, we can have an Israeli state. The citizen will be Arab, Jewish, Christian, whatever. And we will have like a migrant state. The fact that I want to have the two-state solution, for example, it's because I want to keep Israel as with the Jewish majority and the home of the Jewish people. And it means that all of you have a part in Israel, and all of you can say, of course, and you can criticize Israel. I really believe that, like, when you love your children, you still can criticize them. You can love Israel, you can support Israel, and you can still criticize Israel. And you have the full right to do that, because that's the meaning of the Zionist vision. There's a difference between voting and vocal your voice, your opinions. That's different. I don't think you should vote. I don't think Israelis that live outside Israel should vote, unless they're coming on the election day. I don't think they should vote if they're not living in Israel. Yes, because at the end, the government that will be elected will decide to go, yes or no, to war, or decided what will my children learn at school, and so on and so on, what to do with the budget. But there's a difference between deciding on the budget or if to go to war and to express your feeling about Israel as Jewish state or democratic state or a value. And I think the values, it's something that we have in common. And the values, it's something that you can not only criticize, but it's your duty. I think it's your duty, and that's why I came here. It's your duty to criticize or to support, depends on your opinion. But the fact that during the years, the Jewry all over the world, especially in the United States, felt that they can only support the governments of Israel and can only support Israel, but to criticize is not allowed, I don't agree with that.
I got to think
You're
on
confused.
that one a little bit. No, honestly, I really do. We certainly have a sense, I think, in America that one, as Jews, we don't air our dirty laundry in public. Because we have,
It's only on Poland oriented families.
Guilty. At the same time, we don't want to give to Israel's enemies any ammunition to be able to turn and say, look, the Jews themselves aren't behind Israel, and therefore why should we, and why should the government, and on and on. So it's a difficult thing for us to do, I expect. I know that, I will tell you that when the Prime Minister decided to back away from the program of the wall, and the program, or end to support the idea that the Orthodox could decide who was a Jew, I was completely torn asunder. How could I continue to support the state economically, to go visit a state that absolutely denied the very essence of who I was? So it is a tough issue, but my question to you is, you intrigued me. I had no idea that you were part of a progressive congregation, and that you are bringing your daughter, I don't know if your son did, but bringing your daughter up to be recognized as bat mitzvah. How did you come to that, and how is the strength of the progressive movements, both conservative and reform within Israel, how is that coming along in your eyes?
Okay, I'll start with answering your first question, because I think there were at least two questions.
It's a rabbinic thing.
Two important points. First, I think to be pro-peace is to be pro-Israel. You have to separate, and that's one of, we talked about it, the misleading myth in Israel, that the government, and especially Netanyahu, is trying to convince, and a little bit successful in that, to convince the public, the people in Israel and outside Israel, that if you criticize the government policy, it means you criticize Israel. If you're against the government policy, it means you're against Israel. We called names like the fifth column and traitors and stuff like that, not because we are against Israel, because we're against the government policy. So Netanyahu tried to convince the Israelis, and not only, and you also, that if someone is against him, is against Israel. Netanyahu and Israel are not one. I'm sorry. And I came here because I think it's important that the rest of the world knows that there are other people in Israel that think different from Netanyahu. Yes, he's my prime minister. Yes, he was elected, and maybe, God forbid, he will be elected again. But he's still just elected. It doesn't mean that this is Israel. So saying criticism on Netanyahu doesn't mean you criticize Israel. Or saying that you're against the occupation doesn't mean you're against the army or against Israel. Okay? Thank you. I have a son in the army, and I criticize the occupation. What does it mean? That I criticize my son? No. I think I'm taking care of my child and all the children in Israel and the future of our children. That I don't want them to keep making police work in the occupied territories. 80% of the IDF soldiers are protecting the settlements in the West Bank instead of training and being prepared, God forbid, for war with our enemies. 80% of the soldiers doing police work and sacrificing our values. And this is not helpful for Israel's security. So Netanyahu and his government says that if we withdraw the settlements, there will be no security for Israel. The fact is that all of the security agencies saying that the only way to secure Israel is to give a political horizon to the Palestinians. That with force and with military, you can do as much as you can to defend the Israel citizen, but if we want a real security for the Israelis, we need one border with soldiers that can protect it. Today we can't do it because we have 400,000 settlers living inside the region of 2.9 million Palestinians. And 100 of the settlements is being inside the Palestinian population, and most of the soldiers are keeping them alive, let's say it like that. So the absurd is that the government is telling that this is the right way to secure Israel, and the fact is, or you know what? Alternative fact is, okay, I'm being, honest. Alternative fact is that all the Shin Bet, the Mossad, the army, the intelligence, the leaders, and the general saying that the only way to keep safety is to withdraw from the settlement. So everybody is a leftist, everybody is wrong, everybody hates Israel, everybody is the fifth column. So there's an alternative truth. It doesn't mean you're against Israel. So being pro-peace is being pro-Israel. Thank you.
But reform? No, no.
Yeah, but I wanted to answer
Absolutely.
your second question.
You're a rabbi. You have to let her talk about her children. What are you talking about?
Exactly. So I have to say, when I was 16 years old, as teenagers start to think, who am I, the world? Why am I Jewish? Why am I'm an Israeli? Do we need an Israel state? Can we live at the free world and everybody will live together without borders? John Lennon and all of that. So I started looking and asking questions because, like I said, I grew up in a secular home, having a holiday, and that's it. And for my bat mitzvah, I've been asked if I want to go abroad or to have a party. And nobody teach me anything at school, so I started learning by myself, starting to go into lectures, starting to learn about what is Judaism and why am I Jewish and why I want to stay Jewish. And I think the knowledge and the notion that for me to be Jewish is not a religious issue, but rather my identity, my connection to my family, my community, my people, my tradition, my history. That's who I am, and that's what I want to pass to my children. And I don't want for them to be disconnected from their Jewish identity like I grew up. So that's why I joined Bet Daniel Temple, and Rabbi Meir Azari is a great friend, and my 2 boys had a bar mitzvah, and my girl is having bat mitzvah next week, and sometimes we go for a holiday ceremony and Shabbat ceremony. I have to say, if I had one next to my home, it was easier, because then I will have a community that I can go with. So that's something that I'm lacking in the life in Israel. I really wish that we have a stronger community life in Israel as a secular. We're missing that.
Can I'm sorry. Your answer was so beautiful. I want to throw something back at you.
Join the conservative synagogue.
Join it. What? Sure.
Give us some love.
In the same way, I think that we can object to certain policies of a particular government and yet not throw out Israel with the same bathwater. I want to say this about God. Reject and have trouble with the concept that you have been taught, but don't throw out God with that bathwater, because God's there. You just haven't learned the right appreciation. Okay?
Yeah, I don't believe in the Haredi God either. But I'm going to switch gears entirely, with your permission, ask something about one of your passions. I think Time Magazine just said the Me Too movement here in America as Person of the Year. I still think somehow that delegitimizes women, that the Me Too is a phrase and not a woman. But and you are passionate about the rights of women and women who have been assaulted and harassed and persecuted. I was wondering if you wanted to say anything about the challenges that you face working for women's rights in Israel. Sometimes I think Israel is better at women's rights because women serve in the military and Israeli women are so strong, and you have Wonder Woman. So I figured, and then sometimes
Wonder
I think...
Woman is ours or yours?
I know.
It's confusing.
And then sometimes I think it must be harder because it's still a Middle Eastern culture, and in some ways machismo for men. Men have to be able to be men. And so I was wondering if you see the challenges in Israel that you're trying to correct similar to those in America or very different, and how you try to change things in Israel for women.
Wow, that's a big question. I think in Israel, the status of women and the issues of I forgot the word, sorry. Discrimination, sorry. Discrimination against women, it's no different from other places in Western world. I do think we have two main issues that make it different. One, of course, like I already talked about, it's the religious and state issues, of course, divorce, marriage, the status of women in Israel, and in this sense is very crucial because, I think only Israel, Iran, Pakistan, maybe Philippines are the only country that you can get married and divorced only by religious. So that's a huge problem, and of course it discriminates women. The other issue is that we are very, like you said, machoistic and military society. Of course, women are part of the army now, and more units are open to women. And we're supposed to have also combat women, combat soldiers, but they haven't finished we have a law since 1998 that women, all the position in the army should be open to women as men, but they don't agree to open the combat position. But we have more and more women in all kind of position, and of course it wasn't when I was in the army. But still, because it's a very military society, and women cannot be a combat soldiers, so they cannot be a higher officer in the army. And if you look at the Israeli society and you look at the political arena and you look at the business market, you see that the people that are getting the higher position are probably being in higher position in the army. So the army is really influencing society, and then another source of discrimination against women. But I also have to say something really good on Israel, and I'm sorry that I'm not so, maybe I'm flattering myself a little bit. But I think the legislation, the law in Israel concerning battered women, concerning sexual assault, sexual harassment is really, really progressive in a lot of ways. I don't say that the implications are the best. We have problem with the police force. We have problem with the prosecution. 80% of the complaints are not having indictment. Just now we have a member of the Knesset that 20 women went to the police and complained that they arrest them, but only 2 at the end agreed to give a complaint to the police, and at the end none of them wanted to go to court, and he stayed in the Knesset, and he's the head of the Justice and Law Committee in the Knesset. So, saying that, still, I don't know any other country that its president set 8 years in jail for rape. And I think a lot of legislation, like I said, is really progressive in Israel. Some of that I legislate. For example, if you're a rabbi and you have a woman or a man that come to have talk with you, to console with you, in the past, if you slept with them and it wasn't consent, it wasn't considered as sexual abuse or assault. And today it is, because I changed the law. Because if the law says that you cannot, as a psychologist cannot sleep with his patient, why a rabbi can sleep with a woman that come to consult with him? So that's just one example, but there's a lot of example of change that we did in the last few years in this area. And I think the network, the Facebook and the social media change the face of the sexual harassment and sexual assault. And more women are brave enough to come up, like the Me Too campaign, and say this man assault me, or this and this assault me. And it's not that they're looking for revenge, and they're not looking, to go to court and to put someone in prison. They want to say enough is enough. Stop assaulting women. Stop arresting women. Stop using your force. We know that the pyramids of sexual assault is that men abuse men, women, and children. Women assault women and children assault children. But we also know that it's not a crime of sex. It's a crime of power and possession. So it happens when someone has the control over someone. If it's a father on his children, and that's happened a lot, a rabbi with his congregate, or a boss with his worker, or whatever. So we need to stop this exploitation of women, children, and also men, I have to say. A lot of men are also being abused. So, yes, we have really a revolution in Israel in this matter.
Thank you for being a part of it.
We've got to, yes. Turn it over to Hannah, please, who has questions that have come from the congregation here. But also know if we don't get to your questions, the MK will graciously come and answer and talk with others afterwards.
All right. Is this on?
I hear it, but it's got to be much higher. You got to almost have it in your mouth, right?
Oh my
like,
God.
right on
Phil,
your lips.
Phil to the rescue.
How about this?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for all of your questions. There were so many, and there were themes to them. So we've tried to combine some and hopefully cover a lot. But there are a lot of cards still back there. First question. How is Trump's acknowledgement of Jerusalem as Israel's capital affecting efforts for a two-state solution and tensions between Israelis and Palestinians?
Great question. I've been waiting all evening for that. First of all, Jerusalem is my capital. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. I don't need Trump to tell me that. The fact is that Jerusalem is the capital of West Jerusalem. But the East Jerusalem should be the capital of the Palestinian state that would be established. That's the part in Trump declaration that we're missing. I don't need someone to acknowledge the fact that Jerusalem is my capital. But if we talk about the facts, Israel governments all over the years never united Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a divided city. 37% of the residents of Jerusalem are Palestinians. They get less than 10% from the budget of Jerusalem municipality. In East Jerusalem, the education system is the Palestinian Authority system. They are not learning the education program of the ministers of Israel. Some of the neighborhood of Jerusalem are behind the separation wall. Behind the separation wall. There's a neighborhood called Kafir Akib in the north of Jerusalem. You know how you find it? You go through the Kalandia checkpoint, you start driving to Ramallah, and somewhere you take a turn right, and there's a village, a neighborhood, that is part of Jerusalem municipality. Do you think the Israel people think it's Jerusalem? No way. No way. Did the Jerusalem municipality clean the street over there? Take out the garbage? And they're paying taxes, by the way, because they want to stay residents of Jerusalem. So the city is divided. Just last week, they proposed a new law in the Knesset, the government, saying that the settlements surrounding, the Jewish settlements surrounding Jerusalem will become inside Jerusalem, became Jerusalem in the Jerusalem municipality area, and the East Jerusalem neighborhood will be out of the Jerusalem municipality and will become a new unit of 3 or 4 neighborhoods together. Nobody knows what will become with them. So the idea of united Jerusalem, in fact, it's a lie that the government is telling the people and all over the world. The fact is, the city is divided. I think what Trump did was so wrong, not because he said Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, because he stopped, he made United States unable to be a mediator and a negotiator between the Israeli and the Palestinians. And that's terrible, not just to the Palestinian. That's terrible to us, to the Israeli, because we want the Americans to be the negotiator. And not, for example, the EU, like Mahmoud Abbas just said today, stated today. We want the United States to be the mediator. And the Trump administration cannot be anymore after his statement. And it was, like you said, how do you say it? A lip service. Lip service, because he signed that for half a year he won't move the embassy, and he said it will take years. Let me tell you the truth. You don't need to build anything. I've been to the area where the new consul is sitting in Jerusalem. You can move the embassy in a second. You know, you don't need, how he said it, you need architectures and adricals and whatever to have a program and to build. So I think he gave himself, you know, and most of all, he gave Netanyahu presents. And Netanyahu is used to get presents, you know, from friends, but this present will cost us a lot.
All right, we had many, many questions about the two-state solution. So, sort of rephrasing it, can you explain what a two-state solution looks like and what you mean when you say a two-state solution?
Okay. During 3 decades, there's a lot of program and maps and initiative that suggested borders, lines, and all kind of solution for the 3 main problems in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. One is the border, when will be the line, if it be the green line, with the blocks, with the settlements blocks, without the blocks, swap areas, and all of that. That's one issue. Other issue, of course, is Jerusalem. What will happen with the East Jerusalem neighborhood, like I said, and of course the holy area of the Kotel, the Western Wall, and the Al-Aqsa, and all this area. And the third issue is the refugees. Each one of these elements were dealt in so many programs and so many agreements between the 2 sides. For example, the Geneva Accords, the Beilin Abu Mazen agreement that they signed on it. Even in Clinton program, or the 5 steps of Bush, it called. I don't remember exactly right now. So we know what will be the end solution. We know that most of the refugees will not come back to Israel. Of course, not to the Israel state. To the Palestinian state, we're talking about a few 10,000, like they're talking about 30 or 40,000 to the Palestinian state, but not to Israel. Most of them will be given money, how you say it?
Reparations, money. Compensation.
If they're living in Lebanon, in Syria, it's another problem today, or in Jordan, or of course, so they will be compensated. Exactly. Thank you. And that's one issue. On Jerusalem, like I said, the East neighborhood, we don't want them inside Jerusalem. Even now, they want to take them out of the area, the municipality area of Jerusalem. And the only circle of the Western Wall and Al-Aqsa and all of that, it will become kind of international property or international law that will be ruling there. On the issue of the borders, the Palestinians already agreed that most of the settlements in the big blocks will stay around Jerusalem, around Ariel, all this area, and we will swap area in other places. Out of 400,000 settlers, only 100,000 are living in isolated settlements that we need to withdraw them inside the blocks or to Israel state. The other will stay in the blocks. I'm not saying it's easy to withdraw 100,000 people. It will be really hard, and it will be suffering, and it will be a major issue in the Israel society. But still, it can happen. We can do that. It's easier to make peace than to go to war. So I believe that we have the program how to do it. What we don't have is a courageous leaders on both sides, by the way. Courageous leaders on both sides that will say enough is enough and it's time for peace. We had it with Sadat and Begin. We had it with Rabin. We haven't got it for years. Thank you.
In that same vein, and several of you asked this, and it's something I always hear. A two-state solution of the two states at peace is great. However, every withdrawal from occupied Palestine has resulted in rockets from that very land. Right. Why would withdrawal from the West Bank be different? Yeah.
Great question. I want to start by telling you a story. I just forget the name. I'm sorry, I'm so tired. But I will remember in a second. There's an Israeli professor that lives in United States, and he's a professor for human being behavior. And he's great. You need to know him. I will remember the name in a second. He has several books, and I really recommend. Yeah, Dan Ariely. Thank you. Dan Ariely is an amazing person. And he came to Israel around the 2013 election, and we had like a small gathering in Zahava Galon home to speak with him about, the mysterious of the world. Why more than half of Israel population believe in the two-state solution, but they're not voting for the left? Okay? Reasonable question. And he told us a story, and I want to tell you that, and then I will answer the other thing, the question. He said that the United States health minister hired him to to investigate why the Americans are not giving vaccinations to their children. Why the Minister of Health is pouring lots of money, doing outreach, hundreds of millions of dollars, and parents are not going to give their children vaccination. And he did the survey and he talked with people and did the research, and people, he asked them, he gave them two options. He said, in one option, there's a chance 1 in 10 milliards. I don't know the numbers exactly, but you will understand the point. 1 to 1,000, no, to 10 milliard. That if we give the vaccination to your child, it's not proven in any research, but maybe something wrong will happen. It can be crippled, it can be damaged, it can even die. 1 to 10 million. On the other hand, the other option is 1 in any 10,000 that your son will get sick from one of children's diseases and can be really, really sick, crippled, like in polio, for example, disease, or even die. What will you choose? Most of the parents says will choose not to give them the vaccination. And then he said, I needed to understand why. That's not rational. Why to choose, you see the statistic, why you choose the wrong, as he said, the wrong choice. And what the parents explained, explain how the Israelis think about the two-state solution and the peace process. They said, if I'm doing something, an active thing to do, I'm giving my child vaccination and something happened, it's my fault. But if I'm not doing anything and something happened, is sick or die, it's not my fault. This is destiny. It's God's fault. It's happened. Sorry, that's what...
That's well said.
You want me to be a believer. If I'm a believer, God creates and this. So, but most of the people think, if something happened, sickness, ill, car accident, whatever, you say it's fate. It's not me, I'm not responsible. And that's the way the Israeli looks at the peace process. If I'm making an agreement and something happened, people dying, car exploded, missiles are being thrown at me, that's my fault because I acted for it and I'm responsible for it. But if I'm not doing anything, I'm just maintaining what's happening. I'm not doing anything. And something happened, stabbing, terror attack, whatever, that's because we have enemies. And that's the way we live in Israel. We have enemies and they hate us and they try to destroy us. And that question is what the government, the right wing is saying to the people and convince them. Look what happens when we do something. We withdraw from Gaza, we got missile. The fact is that more Israelis, citizens and soldiers, were killed in the Gaza Strip before the withdrawal and not after. A lot more of Israelis died in Gaza Strip, citizens and soldiers. Much less are dead after. The same with the Oslo Accords, with the Oslo Agreement. See what happens. We did an agreement, we got terror attacks. And this Dana really explained so good, because when I do something, when I'm active, I'm responsible. When I'm not doing anything, That's not me.
No, she agrees.
Thank you. It is getting late, and I know you have a very early morning flight. So one more question. Why are you hopeful, and should we be hopeful for the future of Israel?
I think that you cannot be a politician if you're not an optimistic person. And you cannot be in the opposition if you're not optimistic. Like I said before, I see the polls in Israel, and I see for the first time in years the center left has the ability to form a government in the next election. I see the survey and the polls, and I see that most of the Israeli believe in the peace process and believe in the two-state solution. And I look at the Zionist vision and dream of my grandparents and all of us, and I understand that there cannot be another solution. That's the only solution that we can maintain Israel as democratic and Jewish state. No other way. It will take 50 years more. I hope not, but it will take more years. But at the end, there's no other way. 2.9 million Palestinians in the West Bank. 2 million, the 2 million baby was just born 2 months ago in Gaza. They're not going to vanish. We don't have a magic wand to say, plop, and they're gone. They're staying, and we're staying. So we can live on our sword, like Netanyahu said, that's our destiny. We need to live on our sword, and that's what God, he said it, not me. That's what, our destiny. Or you can decide to change destiny and to say enough is enough. And no more killing and no more blood. And, we see it until today. The peace with Egypt, the peace with Jordan. It's not a loving peace. It's not a warm peace. But no one gets killed. And it's a safe border. So I'm sure that is the only solution. And that will happen. I hope, and I don't want to be pessimistic, I hope, we are celebrating Hanukkah, the Cheshmonaim, I don't know how to say it in English, ruled 80 years. And we, Israel, independent only for 70 years this year. So I hope we learn from the past and from history and know how to compromise to have our states forever. And thank you so much for having me tonight. Thank you. And thank you, rabbis. Thank you.
I'm going to make a point. Let me stay here. I'm going to do it from here. I'm going to make, in order to end today, let me just say one thing. Many of those who are here tonight, and I honor you, are sympathetic to J Street and the work they've been doing, and we're grateful that they brought MKRozin here. And many of you may not even know what J Street is, or may feel strongly that they do things that are contrary to the interest of Israel or your own politics. And I want to thank you for agreeing to come. One thing I've been at many cold chicken dinners of speakers with whom I very much disagree. And when they're actually actively involved in their causes, as MKRozin is, I don't regret any of those evenings, even if I didn't touch the chicken, because I'm vegetarian. Because I trust my own ability to think for myself and to be enriched by the people who are in the field being passionate and committing their lives to this work. So thank you. We live in a society where people just won't go to hear views different from their own. And for anyone who came here with a view different from our speaker, I very much honor you for thinking for yourself and agreeing to support Israel in general. So thank you. And finally, and I say that because we make a big deal of the differences, but I'll tell you my two biggest fears. One fear is we're so against each other in our lobbyist organizations, and we so say only Israelis should have an opinion about Israel, that there's no lobbyists going through the halls of Washington, D.C. Congress. And there is no AIPAC, and there is no J Street, and no one cares anymore to tell an American politician how to support Israel and that Israel is important. That's my biggest fear, not that one organization or another is better. And my second biggest fear is here we are on the second night of Hanukkah, and I think of the centuries and centuries of your relatives and our relatives for which there was no Israel. And they had a holiday that said, remember 2,000 years ago, the last time we had a Jewish state? If only we could have one again. And here we are in this building, all committed to Zionism and the survival and well-being of the Jewish state. I'm going to ask Cantor Lori Frank to come forward to lead us all in Hatikva. To close the ceremony, I ask everyone for whom they are able to stand and face the Israeli flag to please do so.
Kol od balevav penima nefesh Yehudi homia ulefate mizrach kadima ayin litzion Sophia od loved tikvotenu hatikva b'shnut alpayim liyotam choshi be'artzenu be'eretz Sion v'Yerushalayim liyotam choshi be'artzenu eretz Sion v'Yerushalayim.
I am reminded to remind you that all are invited into the back hall for some refreshments, and we'll meet you back there. Thank you.